the heir to the Marquis of Yongning was sentenced to be beheaded after the autumn harvest. His wife packed her dowry and fled back to her natal home overnight. The Marchioness bought me for 1,000 taels of silver. Every night, I was sent to the imperial prison, ordered to bear the heir a child. A month later, my pulse revealed I was with child. 2 months later, the heir was acquitted of all crimes. His first act was to fetch his wife back home. Well, this was awkward. Should I run away with my unborn child? Or should I run away with my unborn child? 1. My grandmother gave birth to 10 children, all strong and healthy. Tragically, in the late emperor's years of endless wars, all my uncles were conscripted one after another, never to return. My mother bore 7 daughters, and then a pair of twin sons. My eldest sister married the butcher who on East Street 3 years ago, the Hu family, who had only one male heir for 3 generations. Welcomed 4 children in 3 years, 3 boys and 1 girl, 2 sets of twins. My second sister married last month, and good news came just yesterday. There were also my cousins, all female. As for me, I was now being clung to by the Marchioness of Yongning, refusing to let go, the noble and dignified Marchioness. Her face streaked with tears, her eyes bloodshot. My grandmother and mother wept uncontrollably with her. I did not understand. The heir to the Marquis of Yongning was to be beheaded. Why were the 2 of them crying so bitterly? We were ordinary folks, not even remotely connected to the Marquis of Yongning's mansion. After crying for a while, the Marchioness wiped her tears. A mammy by her side brought forward a small chest and opened it. Inside, silver ingots were stacked neatly, a full 1,000 taels in all. Do not ask how I knew. I spent every day tapping an abacus, calculating the family's livelihood, scheming tirelessly, all to feed this large family of widows and fatherless children. Not only could I tell the amount of silver laid out before me, but I could also glance at the servants by the Marchioness's side and know exactly how much money they carried and where they hid it. When my father was still alive, he could not hide a single copper coin of his private savings from me. If I had known he would leave us so soon, I would have let him keep some. Now, it was too late for regrets. The mammy set the chest on the table. I knew it was the silver for my indenture. 2. The Marquis of Yongning's mansion, like my eldest brother-in-law's family, struggled with having male heirs. For generations, only one male heir had been born each time. This generation, Xie, the heir to the Marquis, had just married his wife and completed the wedding rites when he was arrested, thrown into the imperial prison without so much as a trial. At dawn, news came. Xie was sentenced to be beheaded after the autumn harvest. His wife did not even put her dowry into the mansion's storehouse. She directly gathered her people, loaded her dowry, and fled back to her natal home. One could forgive others for such an act, but for his wife, Dong Zhenju, it was truly ungrateful. This marriage had come about because Xie had once saved Dong Zhenju's life from an icy lake. Dong Zhenju had emerged unharmed, but Xie had fallen gravely ill, leaving him with a lingering ailment that made him unable to wield a sword or spear, or to set foot on a battlefield ever again. Back then, Dong Zhenju's father was merely a minor official in the Ministry of Revenue. If he had not married his daughter into the Marquis of Yongning's mansion, he would never have become the Minister of Revenue he was today. With the heir's wife gone, and it being early spring, 6 long months before the autumn harvest, the Marquis of Yongning traded his military merits and a promise to guard the northern border forever for the new emperor's leniency, an unspoken permission for Xie to leave an heir for the Yongning Marquis's mansion. The Marchioness had inquired in secret. Word on the street was that the women of the Jing family on Sweet Osmanthus Alley had been blessed with easy pregnancies for 3 generations. That was how she had found our home. As long as Miss Mingzhu bears the heir a child. If the young lady wishes to stay in the mansion in the future, she shall be our noble concubine. If she does not wish to stay, The mansion shall prepare a dowry for her and send her off to marry. The mammy spoke in a gentle tone. The Marchioness stared at me eagerly. I knew full well that I was the head of the Zheng family now. Without my nod, no one else's word mattered in this matter. I met everyone's gaze, and nodded gently. It was not only for the 1,000 taels of silver, but also for that day in the icy lake. Xie had saved not only Dong Zhenju, but also me, Zheng Mingzhu. 3. I left home with only a small bundle on my back. If the family spent frugally, 1,000 taels of silver should be enough to support them. Should it not, my male cousins could buy better brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. My female cousins would no longer have to embroider day and night. The medical expenses for my mother and aunts would also be covered. Sacrifice me alone, and save the whole family. The Marchioness was impatient. That very night, she urged the Marquis to send me to the imperial prison. I wore a black cloak, with a bright red dress underneath. This was the only thing I had brought from home, a gift my father had bought for me years ago. Back then, my sisters at home had mocked me for it. They said I was stocky and dark-skinned, that I was vulgar for being obsessed with making money, and in the end, they laughed and said I would never marry. I did not care now, but I had only been 10 years old then. I had cried while tapping the abacus, tears falling onto the beads. My father had climbed up to the beam of the house and then climbed back down. When he returned, he held a small bundle in his hand. My Mingzhu is the prettiest girl in the world. One day, you will wear this and marry a nice young man. Father had been gasping for breath as he spoke. I knew he had bought this dress with the money he had saved for his medicine, money I had earned from my secret little business. Yet he had not used it to buy his medicine. The dress was too big, trailing on the ground. Father stroked my head. I truly wish I could see that day. I knew father would never see that day. Grandmother and mother had already given up on him. They would rather spend the money on the next generation of boys. That year, conscription came again. Father went, after all. If he stayed, he would die of his illness anyway. It would be better to trade his life for 2 taels of silver as a settlement fee for the family. When father left, I was the only one who went to see him off, a bag of dry rations in my arms. I still remembered his smile in the faint morning light. He said, "Mingzhu, leave if you can. You are not like the rest of them." For I insisted on wearing this dress, and the Marchioness had no choice but to let me. The heir was a stubborn man, who refused to settle for anyone he did not want. Otherwise, 1,000 taels of silver could have bought so many beautiful women. If he had indulged in pleasure every night, someone would surely have become pregnant. The Marchioness had only this one chance. The imperial prison was pitch black. I carried a food box, inside which were the wine and dishes the Marchioness had prepared. In the darkness, hands stretched out constantly, trying to grab the hem of my dress. I walked with great difficulty. The prison guard who was to escort me said not a word, leading me down 2 levels until we stopped at the innermost cell. Only when I stepped inside the cell did he whisper, "I will come to fetch you at dawn. Keep your voice down when you do what you came for." By the light of the prison guard's lantern, I saw that the furniture and bedding in the cell were even better than those in my own room at home. Surely the Marquis of Yongning had spent a great deal of silver for this. I opened the food box and took out the wine and dishes. Xie sat on the bed, watching me, silent and motionless, while there was still a little light. I poured 2 cups of wine and held them out to Xie. "We should drink the nuptial cup." Xie let out a laugh, reaching out to lift my hood. Just then, the prison guard walked up to the upper level, and the imperial prison was plunged into complete darkness. I fumbled to hand the wine cup to Xie, but he would not take it. I held it out to him again. He said, "Miss Dong, though we have performed the wedding rites, we have not consummated the marriage. We are not yet husband and wife. You can leave, and no one will blame you." I did not answer, holding the wine cup out to him a 3rd time. This time, he took it. I looped my arm through his and drained the nuptial cup in one gulp. I did not know if Sieduan drank his wine or not. I threw the cup aside and threw myself on top of him. In the darkness, I fumbled wildly, trying to tear off Sieduan's clothes. After a long while, I could not even undo his belt. Frustrated and angry, I burst into sobs. Sieduan sighed, rolling over to pin me beneath him. "Do you not regret this?" I cried softly, sinking my teeth into his chest. He hissed in pain, then laughed. "Zhenju, are you a little dog?" Before I could speak, he leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Zhenju, rest assured, I, Sieduan, will never betray you." Dong Zhenju. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. He did not know that his days were numbered, that his life would end this autumn, just like my father. Neither of them would ever see me wear this wedding dress. 5. The Marchioness had added something to the wine. Sieduan had tossed and turned with me all night. When I left the imperial prison, I had to lean against the wall to walk. Everyone still said he was weak and sickly. Truly, rumors could not be trusted. The Marchioness came to fetch me in person. Seeing me stumble out, leaning against the wall, her face lit up with overwhelming joy. She knew her own son. The concubines she had arranged for him were all delicate and beautiful, yet he had not even glanced at them. She had never thought he would accept someone as plain and clumsy as me. I was settled in the courtyard closest to the main compound, attended by 7 or 8 maids and mammies. The Marchioness even specially hired a female physician to live in the next room, so she could feel my pulse every day. For a whole month, Sieduan did not fall ill. Every night, he loved me so fiercely I thought I would die. I was no less ruthless. His chest and back were covered with bite marks and scratch marks. We said not a word to each other, only clinging to each other in desperate passion. That feeling of living on the edge, of having no tomorrow, could only be soothed by truly possessing each other. A month passed, and my pulse revealed the telltale sign of pregnancy. The Marchioness wept for joy, hurrying to open the ancestral hall to pray to the ancestors, hoping they would bless me with a son. That night, when I went to the imperial prison again, the prison guard had been replaced. The mammy with me slipped a silk purse to the new guard, who then whispered to us that shortly after I had left the imperial prison that morning, Sieduan had escaped. He was gone. When I had bid him farewell in the dark that morning, had he been awake, he had not even been willing to say a single goodbye to me. Did he know he was going to be a father? I still went into the imperial prison. The cell was empty, yet everything inside remained exactly as it had been. I walked to the bed and sat down. Only last night, we had nestled together, and he had recited a line of poetry to me. If love between two people is true and enduring, it need not be bound by the days and nights together. Ah, so he had already said goodbye to me. It was a pity I was not Dong Zhenju. If it had been her, she would have known exactly how to reply. I was only Zheng Mingzhu from Sweet Osmanthus Alley, who could only hold Sieduan tight and sink her teeth into his shoulder. 6. The mammy held a lantern. Waiting silently by the door, for the first time, I saw this place clearly, every detail of it. A book lay open on the table, a writing brush still resting on the brush rest. Behind me, on the bed, the brocade quilt was a messy heap. Of course it was. He had never been one to fold his quilts, had he? I could not help but smile, reaching out to pull the quilt towards me. As I shook it out, a beaded bracelet fell out. Had Sieduan left this for me? I picked it up and put it on my wrist. It was loose. Too big for me. His hands were large, his wrist much thicker than mine. I would probably never see him again in this life. I would not hand this over to anyone. I folded the quilt neatly, then glanced back one last time. Father, look, in this life, I have worn a red wedding dress, drunk the nuptial cup, and married the fine man who pulled me out of the freezing lake with his own hands. The seed he left behind will take root and grow within me. I am no longer a rootless duckweed. From now on, someone will walk the road with me. I left the imperial prison. This beautiful dream was time to wake up. I never returned to the Marquis of Yongning's mansion. The heir's escape had enraged the new emperor. The imperial forest guard surrounded the mansion, allowing no one to enter or leave. The mammy wept in anxiety. She had been the Marchioness's wet nurse, bound to her by deep affection. Otherwise, the Marchioness would never have trusted me to her care. I took the mammy with me and rented a small courtyard to live in, comforting her gently. In my eyes, the new emperor's act of surrounding the mansion without harming anyone felt more like protection than punishment. Xie Duan's escape had been far too frivolous, unable to withstand close scrutiny. It was merely that those involved were too blinded to see the truth. 7. I urged the mammy to wait patiently. She glared at me for a long time. Then, thinking of the little heir in my belly, she swallowed her pride and waited on me hand and foot. I kept 500 taels of banknotes close to my body, a gift from the Marchioness when the physicians and female healers had confirmed my pregnancy. I had sewn them into a small cloth bag and hidden it against my skin. I only felt at ease keeping it with me at all times. Once, as a little girl, I had longed to earn a great deal of money, to hire a physician for father, to buy him medicine, but the copper coins I hid were often stolen by grandmother, mother, and my cousins. I had always cried then, and father would sew a small cloth bag for me to hang around my neck. Every copper coin I earned, I would put inside it. When I had saved 100, I would take them to buy medicine for father. Father never bought the medicine. He had saved the money to buy me a wedding dress. That wedding dress had been torn to shreds by Xie Duan that night. I took out 100 taels. The mammy took care of all the rent and household expenses. I only needed to rest easy and nurture my unborn child. One day, the mammy came back from buying vegetables, and after a long hesitation, told me the Zheng family was selling the old ancestral home at a low price, asking if I wanted to buy it. When the Zheng family heard the Marquis of Yongning's mansion was surrounded by heavy troops, they immediately fell into chaos. The arrogance they had shown in the market streets a few days prior, riding on my connection to the mansion, had turned to abject fear. Several aunts and cousins cursed me for being greedy for wealth, crying and shouting to divide the family property. Terrified of being implicated by me, 1,000 taels of silver had not brought them peace and prosperity. Instead, it had torn a once harmonious family apart. Zheng Mingzhu had hoped her family would live in harmony, together forever. I had tried my best. As the Zheng family scattered to the winds, a heavy stone seemed to lift from my heart, leaving me feeling light and free. I pressed 100 taels into the mammy's hand. It would be a fine thing for you to buy it for your old age. The mammy shot me a reproachful look, then took the money without ceremony. I too wanted to buy a small courtyard, not in the capital, but in the Jiangnan region. By the West Lake, the capital was fine, but it had no misty rain, no endless fields of lotus leaves. 8. The Marquis of Yongning's mansion remained surrounded like an iron barrel. The mammy went several times to inquire for news, but returned empty-handed each time. I comforted her. No news was truly good news. At last, the mammy calmed down. She chatted with me about the farce of the Zheng family's division, and even bought fine cotton cloth to soften and sew into small clothes and shoes for the baby. She tried to get me to join her. An hour later, the mammy looked at the countless pricks on my fingers, and promptly chased me away, but as she sewed, she would sigh from time to time. I knew she was worried, so was I. A month passed. One day, the mammy suddenly came running back, her vegetable basket lost along the way. She bolted the courtyard gate, the house door, and the windows, still not reassured. She dragged tables and cabinets to bar the doors, and sat on top of them to hold them in place. I could not help but laugh. What good would this do? If someone truly meant harm, a single fire would be enough. The mammy glared at me. Prince Yong has rebelled. His army has entered the city. They must have stormed the palace by now, so that was it. I smiled at the mammy. Your young master will be home soon. From now on, he would be promoted, his future bright and boundless. How wonderful. I began to pack my bundle. The mammy had sewn many small clothes, as well as tiger-headed hats and shoes. I put them all into the bundle. What if I gave birth to a little girl, tottering about in a tiger-headed hat? I stroked my belly and smiled. I hoped she would look like Xie. He had fair skin and a handsome face. I prayed she would not look like me. The mammy helped me pack. At my words, she hesitated for a rare moment. Miss Mingzhu, you are quite tall, at least, There really was no need for such a forced compliment. 9. The noise outside lasted all night, the clatter of horse hooves coming and going, the shouts of battle from the distance. Something heavy slammed against the courtyard gate at one point, but the silence returned soon after. The market streets did not fall completely silent until the second night. The air was thick with the stench of blood and burning. I could not stop retching. The mammy grew frantic, wanting to go fetch a physician. I held her back. Wait, just a little longer. Before dawn on the third day, I let the mammy go out. As soon as she left, I slung my bundle over my shoulder and followed her out the door. I had to see it with my own eyes to let go. It was the same Imperial Forest Guard, but this time they stood in a protective formation. I hid by the roadside and watched as the mammy entered the mansion smoothly. A servant led a horse to the gate, and Xie walked out. He had grown thin. Dressed in a black light armor, his face was as fair as jade, more handsome than ever. He leaped onto the horse and galloped past me, the Imperial Forest Guard following close behind. Only when his figure was no longer in sight did I go to the familiar real estate agency. I would sail to Jiangnan with one of their merchant ships. I still had 300 taels of banknotes in my small cloth bag. I had pawned the clothes and jewelry I had worn when I left the mansion for over 100 more taels. I knew how to do business. I would be able to support myself and the child, no matter what. Mr. Li, the agent, did not know I was pregnant. Seeing me with a bundle, he thought I had been cast out of the mansion, and could not help but shake his head and sigh. You have no luck, girl. If you had become pregnant, a life of great prosperity would have awaited you. This time, young Master Xie risked his life to capture Prince Yong and his faction. He will surely be granted the title of Marquis. I did not answer, only bowed my head to choose the earliest departing fleet. We agreed to set sail early in the morning 2 days later. I paid the deposit and stepped out the door. Madame Wang, a matchmaker, walked in, heard the news. Young Master Xie traded his great merit in quelling the rebellion for an imperial edict of marriage. He is going to remarry Miss Dong. Mr. Li coughed loudly. Only then did Madame Wang see me, and her face flushed with embarrassment. These agents had the sharpest ears for news. They all knew I had been bought to bear an heir for the mansion. How could they not? Everyone in the agency looked at me with sympathy. Mr. Li gritted his teeth. Forget it. I won't charge you a fee for this trip. When you get there, find a good man to marry. It's far away, anyway. He handed the deposit back to me. Consider it a wedding gift from me. 10. I slung my bundle over my shoulder and planned to find an inn to stay for 2 days. Suddenly, a hand grabbed me. It was the mammy, her eyes red-rimmed. Miss, what are you doing here? Come home with me. The mammy took my small bundle from me. Miss, don't lose heart. The young master has he gone to the Dong mansion to present the betrothal gifts? When is the wedding? In 10 days. The mammy did not dare look at me, afraid to see my grief. I was not actually sad. Xie thought the woman who had clung to him through every night of passion was Dong Zhenju. He had sought an imperial edict for marriage to make amends, to give her a proper wedding. He had meant well. I only felt a little regret. That tiny, secret hope had finally been dashed. I had been too greedy. Mammy, you didn't see me. I was already gone when you went back. What else could I do? I could not have a child before the young mistress even entered the mansion, especially when the young mistress was not barren. I had only thought Sieduan would surely die. All I had done had been for my own future, carried out in secret. If they could not find me, it would be for the best for everyone. The Marchioness says the mansion's bloodline. There is no mansion's bloodline. This child is mine and mine alone. I cut her off. A concubine or a secret lover was never an option for me. My child would live in the bright light of day, with dignity. The mammy hesitated for a long time, then pulled a banknote from her sleeve and pressed it into my hand. Take care, Miss Mingzhu. It was the 100 taels I had given her a few days prior to buy a courtyard. She whispered in my ear, it's only a little over a month. Hurry and find an honest man. It's still not too late. I could not help but laugh. This mammy, who was usually so proper, had a mischievous side to her after all. The mammy rambled on with countless pieces of advice. I listened carefully. A mammy from a great household had vision and experience. Even a few casual words were invaluable. In the end, the mammy's eyes grew red again. You're all good children. It's just fate. Yes, what else could be done? The emperor had granted the marriage. His golden words final. There was no room for change. Sieduan, Sieduan, it is your loss to have missed me. 11. Misty rain hung over the West Lake. The sky a soft blue-gray, truly the scenery of Jiangnan. I bought a small courtyard by the lake, and set up a wonton stall at the gate. Business was modest, the earnings meager, but enough to make ends meet. I told everyone my husband had died in battle, and I had been cast out by his family. Pregnant with his posthumous child, 8 months later, I gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. Aunt who had helped with the delivery, smiled and congratulated me, a dragon and a phoenix. An auspicious pair, a great joy, Mrs. Zheng, you are blessed. The 2 babies wailed with their mouths wide open, their voices loud and clear. I cried tears of joy, my heart, which had wandered for so many years, finally finding peace. They were flesh and blood, the continuation of my life. On the baby's full-month celebration, a guest arrived at the house. Miss Mingzhu, you have been quite hard to find. The mammy stood at the door, travel-worn, driving a donkey cart. I calculated the days. You must have given birth soon. I smiled and helped the mammy lead the donkey cart into the courtyard. When she saw my flat belly, her eyes filled with surprise and doubt. I pulled the mammy inside and smiled. Now that you're here, you're not allowed to leave. I placed the 2 babies, sleeping like little pigs, into the mammy's arms, then turned and climbed into bed to catch up on sleep. The past month had exhausted me. The 2 little ones ate and pooped constantly. If it were not for Aunt who coming to help from time to time, I would have broken down long ago. The mammy laughed and cried at the same time. I had no time to tend to her. I was too tired, far too tired. I woke up the next night. The 2 babies were cooing in their cradle, and the mammy, her eyes swollen like walnuts, sat between the cradle, looking from one baby to the other, her face brimming with a smile, seeing I was awake. She brought over a bowl of chicken soup, brewed with red dates, wolfberries, and ginseng slices. When I did not take it, she pulled a small box from her bosom. Inside lay a jade pendant, quiet and still, carved from mutton fat white jade into a pair of fish. It was warm and delicate, exactly as it had been the day Sieduan placed it in my hand. That year, father had just recovered from a severe illness. 30 taels of silver would have cured him completely. But grandmother and mother could not scrape together the sum. 8-year-old Zheng Mingzhu, upon hearing a maid from the Dong family shout, "Whoever saves our young lady shall be rewarded with 50 taels of silver," had jumped into the frozen lake without a second thought. The lake water was bitterly cold. Zheng Mingzhu had struggled to push Dong Zhenju ashore, only to sink into the lake herself. Everyone had swarmed around Dong Zhenju. Only Sieduan, passing by, had dived in and pulled me out. Though young then, Xie knew a woman's chastity was inviolable. He had untied the jade pendant from his waist as a pledge, and vowed to stay by my side until old age. But by the time the flustered servants and maids had carried everyone to the medical hall, the jade pendant was gone without a trace. Later, when the Dong family discussed a marriage with the Marquis of Yongning's mansion, I had gone to claim the reward silver, only to be beaten and thrown out. The little girl had risked her life. Yet the 50 taels of silver had been nothing but an empty promise, and Xie had been sent to recuperate with relatives in Jiangnan. I never saw him again after that. 12. The lake water had been so cold. I still remembered how the hair of Xie and I had been frosted with ice when we crawled ashore. His face was blue with cold, yet he did not let go of my hand. I never thought the jade pendant would reappear before me 10 years later. The mammy wiped away my tears. The young master told you to wait patiently. He will surely send 3 matchmakers with 6 betrothal gifts, and come to fetch you with a bridal sedan carried by 8 bearers. She said Xie had knelt in the ancestral hall for 3 days, and only then had the Marquis and Marchioness nodded, allowing him to go to the battlefield. He would earn military merit, and then beg for an imperial edict of marriage. Rest assured, the young mistress is no longer with us. The young master's sworn sister married a few days ago. The mammy looked at me mischievously. The young master is still yours and yours alone. I bowed my head in embarrassment and sipped the soup. It was for the best. Dong Zhenju had been just a girl, most likely powerless to resist her fate. Besides, who would not wish to live a life of glory and dignity? Xie had an illustrious family background, unmatched knowledge, and such extraordinary looks. I set up my wonton stall again. The mammy looked after the 2 babies every day, keeping herself rushed off her feet, so she called in her relatives to help. I stared at the Marchioness, dressed in the plain clothes of a peasant woman, with a splitting headache. The Marquis was in the northern border, the young master was in the northern border, and now the Marchioness had run off to Jiangnan, who was left in the Marquis of Yongning's mansion. The Marchioness paid no heed to my ramblings. She and the mammy each held a baby, wandering around and having fun all day long, and gifts from the northern border arrived one after another, an unending stream. The Xie family had been military marquises for generations. Everyone whispered behind their backs that the Xies had shed too much blood, cursed by heaven for their sparse offspring. Now, the birth of a dragon and a phoenix had broken that malicious rumor. The Marquis was so overjoyed that he sent out all the treasures he had hoarded for years. I kept running my wonton stall. All these gifts would be the children's support in the future, and my heart was full of joy. The only thing that made me speechless was that after a month or 2, the fair and tender Marchioness and the fair and tender babies had all turned as dark as charcoal. It was truly a sight for sore eyes. 13. One day, a man on horseback came to the wonton stall, a bowl of wontons. A large one. The voice was infinitely familiar. I stared up in a daze. The wild winds of the northern border had turned a delicate and handsome young man into a rough fellow with a stubbly beard. Xie sat down at the table, his pair of peach blossom eyes gazing at me with a smile, a handkerchief in his hand dabbing gently at his sweat. That handkerchief, bright red, fine cotton cloth, with simple patterns embroidered in yellow thread. My face flushed red all the way to my neck. Xie chuckled. I had wanted to keep it to make you a red bridal veil. Unfortunately, it was torn to too many pieces. The rogue had not held back at all when he tore it. I cooked the wontons and set them before him. He reached out and pulled me close. Zheng Mingzhu, I have missed you terribly. He had not called me the wrong name. Mingzhu, not Shunzhu. My eyes suddenly grew warm with tears. Xie wiped the tears from my face with a tender hand. Mingzhu, I'm sorry you suffered. Had I suffered, I had earned every copper coin one by one as a child to save my father. I had not suffered. I had sold myself to the Marquis's mansion to repay a kindness. I had not suffered. I had struggled alone to give birth to a pair of children I had not suffered. All of it had been my choice, my willing doing. But Sieduan's soft words and gentle tone broke me, and I suddenly could not hold back my tears. Oh my, I see nothing at all. The Marchioness's voice was as lively as a young girl's. Not a grandmother's. Even Sieduan, upon seeing his mother and his 2 children all as black as charcoal, froze for a moment. I felt a little flustered. Well, Nan is a little ugly, isn't she? My son had fair skin and handsome features, a spitting image of Sieduan, but my daughter, as I had feared, was even darker now. Sigh, who says that? Nonsense. My Nan is the prettiest girl in the world, not ugly at all. Sieduan stood up and picked up his daughter. Nan is the most beautiful. The 6-month-old